who do you think is going to have more future success at the quarterback spot? Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson?
Well, in terms of immediate success, I'm just going to focus on that right now. I think that it's going to be Baker, and only for the sheer point of because Deshaun Watson might not play this season due to the legal cases. In terms of down the road, I would probably go with Deshaun Watson. One, because I believe that Deshaun Watson is an overall better quarterback. Two, I believe that the Cleveland Browns have a better overall offensive roster structured around Deshaun Watson. Obviously, you have a good receiving core, you have good tight ends, you obviously have the running back tandem that is Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, which are arguably the best tandem in football, depending on who you ask when healthy. And then Cleveland's defense is, of course, getting better with future draft picks and, of course, with pending free agency that's been going on for the last couple of years. And you have probably one of the best pure pass rushers in Myles Garrett to go out there and cause havoc on the other end. So, in terms of having a better team, being a better quarterback, I would definitely say Deshaun, whenever the legal issues end up coming to a close, just because of the sheer fact that I think Cleveland is better constructed and well built around him, as opposed to Carolina has been pretty mediocre over the last couple of seasons, rolling through a couple of different quarterbacks. Obviously, they had PJ Walker, they tried Cam Newton again, they went to Sam Darnold. I mean, it just there hasn't been good success from the quarterback position, and some of their best players have not been able to stay healthy. Of course, Christian McCaffrey is that leading candidate right now that we know carries that offense. So until we see some consistency on the health side, I'm definitely going to go out there and say that once the legal issues are over, longevity wise, I have Deshaun Watson for sure being a better and more consistent quarterback.
Yeah, I do agree with you with the basic assertion that initially I do think Baker is going to have more success within like the first year, maybe two. But if you're looking at this 4 or 5 years down the road, based on how this Deshaun Watson potential suspension goes, I think once that is settled and that is in the rearview mirror, I think Deshaun Watson is basically going to basically fly by Baker. And this is how I'm going to look at it. So when I look at Baker Mayfield, I'm going to assume is going to be the starting quarterback for the Panthers next year. That is going to come down to what I'm going to think as a quarterback battle that's going to take place in training camp between Baker and Sam Darnold. I would give a slight edge to Baker just because Sam Darnold really, no matter where he's been, whether it's been with the Jets or with the Panthers of late, he's been good in specific moments, but really nothing consistent to compared to what Baker's been. Baker has led the Browns in the past to a playoff berth. And not only that, they also won a game, I believe it was in the wild card round a couple years ago against the Pittsburgh
Against the
Steelers.
Steelers.
So I would give a slight edge to Baker in that regard. The only problem is that even if that is the case, I think next year Baker is still going to relatively struggle just as far as the division is concerned because the Panthers are still going to have to compete against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady, and that's just a mountain of a challenge to climb over. And then you got to deal with the Saints who have Jameis Winston return. So I'm of the mindset that Baker's going to be third fiddle in that division, and that's going to be a challenge for him to compete against those top quarterbacks in that division. Then when we kick it to Deshaun Watson, the Browns paid a boatload of money. They guaranteed his entire contract, and he's going to be their quarterback of the future. Now, granted, the Browns have made some adjustments this offseason. They brought in Amari Cooper. He'll definitely be their number one receiver. I imagine that Donovan Peoples Jones is probably going to be the number two receiver behind Cooper. So that's a good 1-2 punch that Deshaun's going to be able to work with whenever he does eventually play with the Browns because I am expecting him to get suspended. We don't know what the length of the suspension is going to be. Once he does return, he's going to definitely have some good targets to throw to at the wide receiver position. And then when you got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt behind you, I feel like that the Browns are going to have a pretty consistent offense here, even though that I would like to see the Browns try to maybe possibly integrate a third receiver, just a better option for Deshaun down the road. But that's something that they can work on over time. Now, I will say that, when Deshaun gets into the starting role and starts actually playing games for the Browns, that division is going to be tough. Baltimore, I think, is a better team than them. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals are a better team than them. The Bengals went to the Super Bowl last year, led by Joe Burrow, who just had leaps and bounds in his career last year. And I just believe that he's on an upward trajectory. But I do think that Deshaun is going to be able to compete with those teams when he goes up against them down the road. Like I said, I think next year is going to be a wash for Deshaun just because I think there's a very good chance he'll probably get suspended for the entire year. If not the entire year, I would say probably a good chunk of it at least. But then after that, going into year 2, year 3, and then year 4 with the Browns, I would expect that Deshaun's going to be very comfortable in that quarterback spot, and I think he's going to be in a prime position to be able to compete with those other quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow in that division. And I do think that when you make the comparison between Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield specifically, like you said, Kev, I think initially Baker will have the more early success, but that's really just based in part that Deshaun Watson is going to be suspended for a good chunk of next year. But then pretty much after that, I think Deshaun's going to have the better career or just have more long-term success than Baker, just because I think the Browns have a better roster than Carolina. Carolina, I think, is the third best team in the NFC South right now, but I do think that the Browns could potentially be one of the best teams in the AFC North once Deshaun Watson's playing at a more consistent level, just based on availability. So overall, I would give the edge to Deshaun Watson for the long-term success, but initial success, I would say Baker, just because Deshaun's not going to be there for the Browns for at least the first couple months.